Welcome to the Heartland Journal's Tennessee podcast with your host, Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of heartlandjournal.com.
Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to the show. I'm Steve Abramowitz, and this is the Heartland Journal podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and pass it around. We only grow with your help. Thanks for doing it. On this show, we are focusing on our nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community. We interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Today, we're talking with special guest Senator Paul Bailey. Paul Bailey is a lifelong resident of the Upper Cumberland. Today, he and his wife Amy reside on their White County farm with their son Caleb, who is also a student at Rhodes College. Paul was a senior at Tennessee Tech when his father Charles approached and persuaded him to join a new trucking business. From meager beginnings, borrowing money against 2 used trucks, they built what today is a thriving family business, CB Trucking, employing over 100 people. Yet today, with Paul serving as general manager, CB Trucking remains a family enterprise. Amy serves as CFO, and son Jordan and daughter Corey also involved in day-to-day operations. A lifelong conservative, the political bug to run for office first bit Paul in 2002 with an unsuccessful bid for the 15th District Senate seat. Despite the setback, the desire to serve remains within Paul, leading him to run and win a seat on the White County Commission, where he became chairman. In 2014, Paul was chosen to fulfill the unexpired term of Rep. Charles Curtis upon his retirement. Paul served in the 42nd House seat while successfully running for the then open 15th District Senate seat representing Smith, Jackson, Putnam, White, Van Buren, and Cumberland counties. While still a first-term senator, Paul's common-sense conservative representation gained him the confidence and support to be named chairman of the Senate Transportation Committee in 2017. Just a year later, Paul was appointed chairman of the Senate Commerce and Labor Committee, where he serves today. Throughout his tenure in office, Paul has taken his business ability and love for the Upper Cumberland to Nashville to be an effective advocate for growth and prosperity to the rural areas of Tennessee, as well as the urban and suburban centers, which have grown so much in recent years. Paul is an advocate of small government and protecting our volunteer state as one of America's best when it comes to living, working, and raising a family. Let's talk to him.
All right, Senator Bailey, thank you for visiting us. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. How are things back in the Upper Cumberland now that session is over and you're back to your day job?
Well, we've been very busy. Not only do I continue with my senatorial duties as far as visiting my 6 counties that I represent in the 15th District, but I'm also in the trucking business and third-generation trucker. Been in our current businesses, been in business since 1986, so 39 years. And so we've been very busy the last several months. It's always getting reacclimated into my day job, if you will, once the session is over. But I enjoy visiting my customers that we have had for a long time relative to the trucking business. And then, of course, my wife and I, we show quarter horses on a national level. So I try to slip out of town from time to time and participate in some horse shows.
Much funner, I'm sure. So a couple questions on trucking business before we get into the Nashville politics stuff. In the news recently, we had Florida and California, and I believe New York, all three were giving out driver's licenses to people, and they just passed a law where they have to speak English. This is obviously a big problem, lots of danger and some deaths on the roads in Texas, whatnot. How does Tennessee handling that, since they have to cross through here to either deliver or get to the next state?
Well, unfortunately, we have those states that are issuing driver's license to undocumented individuals to be able to drive trucks, and especially those that are non-English speaking. And as someone who also operates a commercial warehouse where those drivers are coming into making deliveries, also picking up loads, there's a communication gap that we have dealing with a lot of those truck drivers that are coming in. Now, there was some legislation this year in the Tennessee General Assembly addressing non-English speaking drivers. I pushed back on that just a little bit on the transportation committee, which I serve, and the only reason that I did so was when a driver is put out of service by a highway patrolman, then there is a lot of expense that goes along with that back to the company. Now, if you're a company that is from a state that allows those individuals to be licensed, then again, being in the trucking business, I hated to penalize those companies when they're doing what their state says that they can do. Because you're dealing basically with a wrecker service then that's moving the truck, then a storage fee, then your load is not getting delivered, so your customer's upset with you. So there were a lot of factors that went into my reasoning as to why that I pushed back on it. I'm all for making sure that drivers that are on the road are, number one, safe, number two, that they can definitely speak English and read English. And I can tell you on a personal experience that we see a lot of non-speaking English truck drivers out there. There's more and more of those individuals entering the truck driving profession day in and day out. So it's really a financial burden on some of those companies. The good news is the federal government is now addressing that, which that was something that I felt like that the federal government needed to do. Mm-hmm. Commercial driver's license are really dictated and regulated by the federal government. All those states have certain parameters that they can do in issuing commercial driver's license. But at the end of the day, when it comes to interstate commerce, that was regulated by the federal government. So the Trump administration has weighed in on that. I support that. And I just think that now we just have to be mindful of whenever those companies, if they're a bad actor, then absolutely they need to be taken off the road and the company needs to be penalized. But I just was thinking of myself. I've been in a situation before where a driver has been pulled over, mistaken identity. There's been another person that's got his same name that's maybe had a warrant out for his arrest. I had a driver spend 2 nights in an Arkansas jail just a couple of years ago. I had to pay $1,500 tow bill on the truck, had to pay 2 days storage on my truck. My load was delivered late. And then all of a sudden it's kind of like, oh, we made a mistake. You're not the person that we thought you were. And released him, but yet my company was still out all that money that we had to pay. So that's the reason why I just pushed back on it. But I really think that we've got to make sure that these truck drivers that we're giving a commercial driver's license to can speak English and can read English.
It is a fascinating crux of where the federal government, the interstate highway system, and of course the states' rights issues come into play that you wouldn't even think about. One of the other subsets I've discovered is that the what do you call them when you pull over, the rest stops have been basically overwhelmed with some of these folks who can't really, do I go forward, do I stop, do I whatever, and so then somebody who's legitimately trying to come through, nowhere for him to stop. And of course the little roadside shops that are mom and pop, they can't handle all the influx. So it's a problem for the speed of delivery. We once upon a time, you're out there by FedEx, it was overnight delivery on demand. We were running pretty smoothly. These type of things certainly put a hiccup in speed of delivery and smooth commerce.
Yeah. And let me just say this. This just happened to me in our company in the last month. We had, again, there are a lot of foreign-owned trucking companies in the U.S. And we just experienced in the last month, one of these companies, we did our third-party logistics. We brokered a load over to this company. They checked out, showing that they were from Fishers, Indiana. The dispatchers spoke English, although you knew that they were foreign. Next thing you know, my load goes amiss. And the load was supposed to be going to Houston, Texas. We put a tracking on the driver, but the driver ended up in St. Louis, Missouri, drops the load at a truck stop, the load disappears, and then now the company is nowhere to be found. So
Sounds like organized crime.
it is
Almost.
very
The old
organized.
cigarette drop off on the back of they dropped out. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay, that's a whole nother kettle of fish there.
exactly. So, right now I am just, kind of furious because here's the other thing. We filed a claim with their insurance company, but their insurance company is not wanting to cover the claim because they were saying that the driver that picked up the load, who was, by the way, English speaking, was an American, was born in America, from America, was not listed as a driver on the company's insurance policy. So now their insurance company is wanting to deny the claim. So who's ultimately responsible for paying that claim? My company.
Yeah.
And so I'm a little bit chafed right now over this
Well, they
situation.
don't know who they're messing with. So here's Senator from Tennessee. So tell us about your district and what makes it one of the best places on earth to raise a family.
Well, we are right in the heart of Tennessee, and we have some of the most natural beauty in the state of Tennessee. I travel all across the country for various reasons. I was just in Parkersburg, West Virginia yesterday looking at some heavy-duty equipment and thought how beautiful it was to fly over and see kind of that eastern Kentucky, West Virginia area, see the rivers flowing. And but then as we came back into Tennessee, I'm like, there's no place like Tennessee. And so we have a lot of state parks in my Senate district. It's a great place to raise a family. We have good schools. We have great law enforcement. We have low crime, and there are a lot of jobs available. And these are just not, your average wage jobs. There's a lot of high-paying jobs in our area. Property taxes are low. We're not like Nashville where property taxes are just continuing to go out the roof. So it's a great place to raise a family, and it's a very conservative district, very conservative minded people. It's interesting. I met a young lady just this past Tuesday night, and she moved here from California. From Southern California, and she brought her family here because she was tired of Gavin Newsom and how California was going. And she said, I was just looking for a place that I could bring and raise my family. And it's just like she pulled out a map and had searched a little bit and kind of pinpointed Sparta, Tennessee. And so she moved her family here, and she said, I just love it here. She said, I sold my home there. I came to Sparta. I was able to buy a nicer home, pay for it, and have a little cash left over. And so, but it's just a wonderful place, and we've got
We can welcome her to America.
Yeah, welcome her to Tennessee, and so, but it's a great little district, and you've got your small towns like Spencer, Tennessee, and Gainesboro, Tennessee, but then you have Cookeville and Crossville, and so you have a lot of amenities that if you want to participate in some nice amenities, or if you just want to be out in the country, you can do so.
All right. You and I have another thing in common. We're both in a group of about 4,400,002 podcasters. You had Backroads and Backstories with Paul Bailey, a behind-the-scenes look at the issues and to better get to know the people who are shaping the future of the volunteer state. Looks like you put it on the shelf for a little while since 2021. Did you like podcasting more than politics?
Oh, it's always great to interview individuals, even if they were your colleagues or if they're commissioners of different departments of state government, and just total individuals, and have a conversation. I think people get to know you on a personal level through podcasting. I absolutely enjoyed doing the podcast. I hope to be able to get that going again. The young man that was working for me, that was my producer, he took another job and basically has left me not being able to find that person just yet to get it going again. And as you know, from time to time, it's a little difficult to always get individuals your schedule and their schedule worked out to come in and do the podcast. And plus, you want to interview people that folks that are listening to your podcast will find interesting, and find something about that person that they didn't know. And so that was always my goal, was to try to find individuals that were on my podcast that you could find out something about them that no one else knew about.
So, in a long-form question and answer setting, it's a lot easier than, say, a committee where everybody's 2 minutes or this type of thing. So, absolutely. But I was being a little tongue-in-cheek, but seriously, how do you find politics? Do you love it or prefer trucking business and being home in Sparta with the family?
Well, obviously, I love politics. It's interesting. I was at a friend's retirement party this past Saturday, and my 5th grade teacher walked up to me and Mrs. Rich, and she said, "Paul Bailey, I remember you standing at the corner of my desk saying, 'Mrs. Rich, I'm going to be a politician one day.'" And she said, "And here you are." She said, "And I had no doubt at the time that you wouldn't be a politician." So, it's I think it's a love of both. And I tell people all the time, we live in a political world. I have folks say to me, "Well, I don't like politics." Well, if you're at church, there's politics in church. If you're involved in a civic organization, there's politics involved in a civic organization. Your children
school boards, unfortunately.
You go to school, exactly. Every aspect of your life has some form of politics in it, unless you just become a total recluse.
Which Lafayette actually said made America so charming, where the rest of the world didn't actually do that. They didn't engage civically at the grassroots level.
Right. So politics, I love. 3rd generation trucker. So, that's just part of who I am. My grandfather was driving the roads of Tennessee before there was a interstate system. Mm-hmm. He taught his 3 sons how to be truck drivers. And then, of course, my dad taught me how to be a trucker and drive trucks. So, that's something that I just have a passion for. It was a lot easier 30-something years ago than it is today. But, I absolutely love both. On the political side, I don't always like the legislative aspect of it. I enjoy being in session. I enjoy meeting constituents. I enjoy meeting those that have issues that need to be brought before the Tennessee General Assembly. But what I really enjoy is being able to be that bridge between my constituents and a Department of State government. You have individuals that call you with an issue with Department of Environment and Conservation. You have individuals call you with TDOT issues. You have Department of Children's Services. You have a whole host of constituent services that you do, and that's probably what I enjoy the most about being a state senator, is being that bridge between my constituents and state government. A lot of times it's, the first thing out of someone's mouth whenever they call me is, "Well, Senator Bailey, I know you're a busy person, but I was just really hoping you could help me with something, and I hate to bother you." And I'm like, "It's no bother. That's what I'm here for." And so I'm always happy to help bridge that gap. And incidentally, going back to someone like from California that's in here, I represent Fairfield Glade in Cumberland County, which is one of the largest retirement communities in the state of Tennessee, as well as Lake Tansy. And so I meet a lot of different individuals that are moving here, especially that have retired and moving into Fairfield Glade. And those individuals, like from Illinois and New York and from other states, they're always amazed when they see me at functions.
Yeah.
Because they'll say, "Well, I never met my state senator. I never met my congressman. I knew their name, but I never met them personally."
Usually they don't know their names.
And so
turnover is usually pretty high.
Exactly. But they're always just amazed that how accessible that I am to them. So, again, it's a love of both.
Yeah, Tennessee is very special that way. I come from Washington State, and no way. Starting this podcast, I could only get Republicans to come on because there was only a few of them, and the Democrats were like, "No, because you'll ask me a question." It's like, well, yeah. It's like, You don't want to answer a question. So they are very elusive. Just to finish up on your podcast, you had one, Journalism in the Age of Social Media. I have been here about 3 years next month, and I find that the Tennessee media to be very liberal, let's just say. You can tell by how they cover the supermajority Republicans up there in Nashville, like you. How do you find the treatment of Tennessean and the Lookout? I guess the commercial appeal would follow you pretty closer.
Yeah, so I think this is my 12th year in the Tennessee General Assembly, and so from the time that I became a state lawmaker to today, I have seen a lot of the true journalists retire and leave. And so now it's a revolving door as far as those that cover the Capitol, whether it be with the Tennessean, whether it be with the local news stations in Nashville, or it's the Chattanooga Times Free Press. It's changed so much, and you used to know those individuals by name, and there was also a trust factor that if you wanted to be give them some, information off record that you could do so.
Collegiality or trust, like you say.
But you can't do that today because, I mean, you
Don't
just,
run with it.
and they're, they're always out to get you if they can. And you're right. They're biased and they slant more to the left than they do to the right. And why, I have no idea. When Tennessee is as red as it is, you would think that some of these news outlets would at least try to send in at least a journalist that was either in the center or at least leaning a little bit to the right. So,
amen. Yeah.
But unfortunately, they don't.
People don't often know this, but the Tennessean is owned by Gannett since 1979. That's USA Today, and it leans left. So, of course, they do. They own Dixon Herald, where Jody Barrett is, and Gallatin News Examiner. A lot of coverage for a red state. And you think it makes a difference?
Oh, absolutely. 100% makes a big difference. And, it's interesting. The vote took place in Congress or in the Senate last night on defunding, NPR and PBS. And so, and those news outlets, they slant to the left and they don't always give, the true facts of the story, and they have a slant to it.
It's gone past slant. I think it's full on. The Overton window has moved to the next building.
Well, and so, but all news media has done that. And what's been so interesting, Donald Trump's just calling these folks out and just saying that's fake news. And, you should be ashamed of yourself for even asking that question. Why are you asking me that question? You should have asked Joe Biden that question. And so I think that, he has really tried hard to let America see, how biased they really are.
It'd be nice to see some wealthy Tennesseans on the conservative spectrum actually start one as well to compete with this, because Gannett is gobbling up the entire country. I mean, NC5 is owned by Scripps. Fox is Sinclair. Do you think the TV guys are more even than the print guys? Because really, other than Rupert Murdoch, there are no conservative alternatives to these, like you just said, local papers that are willing to slant to the left.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you say that, especially about TV news. You can go through the the four main channels, 2, 4, 5, and 17, and hear the different reporting as far as the host of the show, the anchor of the show is reporting. And, it's just a lot of times they'll say, well, the big beautiful bill is supposed to do that, or Trump is touting that it'll do this. And, and you can just, it's just a play on words that, they say things that they're actually being negative relative to whatever he's doing.
Yeah, they learn those tricks in journalism school up there at Northwestern or Harvard.
Exactly. But here's what again, and not to just go back on talking about Donald Trump, but to say that he's been masterful over the last 6-7 months since he's been back in office to hold those news conferences, and for example, having the president of South Africa there, and our national news media was trying to cover up the fact of the all the oppressions that were taking place relative to
killing the farmers,
killing the farmers down there. And I mean, to me, that was masterful. I mean, you've got all of those national news outlets right there in the Oval Office, and I mean, he
forced them to cover it.
He forced them to cover it. He forced them to cover it.
It'd be nice to see some Tennessee folks do the exact same thing. Force them to cover it, because they won't if they're given their own news cycles to at least they haven't historically.
Right. So you've got to. So I think that, again, to your point, it would be great. Of course, we also realize that printed news is going away, so it's mostly online. Podcast. Again, back to the podcast. That's where people are.
That's right.
Are finding
heartlandjournal.com. Everybody, you can see the whole library, including this interview. And speaking of that, you and Monty Fritz, who sat right there not long ago, had House Bill 1504 and Senate Bill 1299 that prohibit social media from censoring. Based on what we've just been talking about, tell us what made you run that bill.
Well, we want to make sure that that we all have freedom of speech, and we don't want these social media platforms censoring what we have to say, especially on the conservative side. For example, I think that most of our social media platforms, we saw this especially back during the 2020 presidential election, Facebook and Twitter at the time, they were just running those algorithms and taking out everything conservative, but yet pushing forward that liberal progressive agenda. And so, and they're hollering about how they like their First Amendment right. They're be able to, don't squash my First Amendment right. Don't take it away from me. But yet conservatives was having that issue. Yep. Our speech, our First Amendment right was being squelched because they were pushing the more progressive, liberal narrative forward more so than the conservative narrative.
Freedom of speech for me, but not for thee. The old classic, like, exactly. I'll defend it to the death for myself, but for you, not so much, you conservative crazy people.
Exactly. So just wanted to make sure that, look, I tell people all the time, we all have opinions. I may not agree with your opinion. You may not agree with my opinion, but I'm not about squelching your opinion. But at the same time, if you're speaking what you believe, then I should have the same right to speak what I believe, and then give your audience the ability to decide which way do they want to go.
That's what democracy is supposed to look like.
Exactly.
That's why we have these conversations. And I've opened this mic to every one of the senators and Democrats that are Democrats and congresspeople, and yet that's okay. If they don't want to come on, they have that choice too. That's freedom of choice. Ron Travis in the House and you in the Senate have House Bill 1109 and companion Senate Bill 1319, where you come in. Parents could be charged with a felony for failure to turn their children over to the Tennessee Department of Children's Services, possibly even when the charges against them are based on anonymous and unsubstantiated allegations. Are you concerned about anonymous allegations, or is there something in there that makes you feel it's necessary?
Well, so this legislation was brought to me by one of my General Sessions judges back in the 15th Senate District. And he also, in his younger life, had been an attorney with DCS. And so what we had happen to actually some children, two different times, we had children that was going to be removed by DCS from the family, and the parents absconded with those children and left. In fact, there was a big news story here in Nashville about one of the families being caught here in Nashville. They had come down, got in a motel, kind of one of the these sleazy type motels, and they were hiding out there. It just so happened that I think a license plate reader picked up the license plate, and they were able to pinpoint them. This just happened a couple of years ago, actually, about the time that we passed this legislation. So there is a process in place, and I know that some of the conservative news media has kind of hammered me on this issue whenever we brought this legislation forward. I went back and talked to the judge about it, who asked me to bring this, and so it was a situation to where they were trying to put enough teeth into a family. They've already been notified that the children are going to be removed. The process has already taken place. In other words, the judge has already ordered that the children be removed and taken out of the home, and then the parents abscond with those children and leave. And so, in his view, as someone that's sitting on that bench that sees these cases all the time, he felt like that there needed to be some additional teeth placed into the law relative to those parents maybe leaving with those children and actually putting them in more harm's way.
And there's no concern about someone anonymous calling up and saying, "Hey, this guy Cash is, doing something bad." Click, and then next thing you know, he's up in the trial for something he may or may not have actually done. They're just doxing him.
Well, there's still due process there.
Okay.
Yeah. So if an anonymous call comes in and says, "Hey, John Doe is absconded with his children," so that may be a tip that comes in, but there's still a due process that takes place that ensures that those anyone that's being accused of absconding with their children is they're given due process so that there's no false allegations there.
That's good, because not that long ago there was a doxing situation where they were sending pizza deliveries and swatting, sending the police out saying that upstairs are murdering everybody, and they get there and next thing you know, you're getting smoke bombed. It's 3 a.m. You're in your underwear and it's freezing, and they're saying, "Oh, I guess it was a false alarm," because of anonymous tips like this. And so the pizza company's out of the money, like you said about your company.
Exactly.
And the wife is freaked out. The kids are afraid. Terrible thing. Yeah. And they did it to conservatives. The young man who likes to impersonate Trump here in Nashville was one of them. So it's a hometown thing. So hopefully that bill doesn't get into crossways with that because of the ability to, face your accusers, as the law says.
But again, the bill and which is now law basically says that due process has to be given, and also the order has already taken place for those children to be removed from the home. Those parents have been notified by DCS, law enforcement, that we're removing your children for mistreatment,
so it's
abuse.
Not a 911 3 a.m. call where all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, "Hey, it's not true." Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah, and I think that was always the misunderstanding about this. The due process had already
There has to be some priors. There has to be a history of this before it gets to that stage.
Exactly.
Great.
We're and I think that was a little bit of the misunderstanding about the bill. They just thought, hey, John Doe's abusing his kids. Next thing you know, they're in there and they jerked the children out of the home. And look, so let me just say
a little bit like this ICE stuff that they're trying to blame for, masks and midnight raids and these type of things. Where it's like, well, no, they're illegally letting children work on cannabis farms and they're undocumented. That's a crime.
14.
Yeah, and it wasn't as if it was an anonymous tip. I mean, this was the detective investigation and it led to arrests. So you're saying this legislation isn't a green light to start raiding people in the middle of the night.
Exactly.
This is to... Okay, good.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's the one thing that, again, I think the narrative was they tried to spin the narrative that we were going to just go in and take children away and from their parents, without due process. And let me just say this. There's two departments that me as an individual, I do not want to work for. And that's Department of Children's Services and Department of Corrections. I admire and applaud all of those individuals that work for those departments, especially if you're a DCS employee and you're having to go in and to take children away from parents, especially if there's abuse that's taking place, in that home. And
Not a fun, pleasant day job. That's for
it's
sure.
not, but I can also tell you there are issues within DCS. I mean, there's a lot of issues within DCS. I've had workers, I'm talking 20 plus year employees of DCS saying, Paul, we're removing children and we're holding those children outside of the home because we've removed them, but they're no better off
Right.
where we're taking them out of the home and where we're placing them than by leaving them in that home.
That's a
but
bad
yet,
situation.
but we're being forced to have to do that. And so we've, let me just say this: Governor Lee is he's basically a lame duck governor, if you will. We've seen several of his commissioners go ahead and start resigning and leaving, so they'll be jumping ship, a lot of them, between now and probably get past session. This next year they'll be gone. But I'm hoping whoever the new governor is comes in, they have got to get control of DCS and Department of Corrections. We're having way too many issues in those two departments.
What if you had to weigh a scale, Core Civic, what responsibility do they have in this?
Well, I think Core Civic is a huge part of the issues that we have within Department of Corrections right now.
As the solution or the problem?
I think they are a problem. I think they are a huge problem. I've got video on my phone of the inmates whenever they took over the Trousdale County facility. The inmates were filming what they were doing to correctional officers. Now, inmates are not even supposed to have cell phones, but yet within the Trousdale County Correction Facility, they had cell phones, and they are taking the correctional officers. They're basically stripping them of their clothes. Now, they weren't physically abusing them, but they were mentally abusing them by stripping their clothes off, taking garbage cans and dumping them on top of their head, and just basically humiliating them. And they're recording that on a phone. And so, but yet, Department of Corrections and Core Civic come out and basically say, well, that it really wasn't that bad. No one was hurt.
Boys will be boys.
So anyways, I just think that we have got to get control of that. I've had constituents call me that their loved one, their son is within Trousdale, and they are being extorted for money. I mean, I had a personal friend of mine whose son was in Trousdale, and he called me one night and he was just crying. He said, Paul, I'm broke. But yet they're just wanting me to send them another $250. And I said, don't send it. Well, they could kill my son.
Wow.
And so, you contact Department of Corrections, and of course, the first thing they say, well, tell him not to pay him. I've already told him not to pay it.
Right.
I said, the issue is they're wanting him moved out of there to another facility because they're afraid. Well, we'll put him in solitary confinement.
Nice. Yeah. It's your money, your life, or your sanity.
Exactly.
They give Senator Brent Taylor a hard time. Seems like the only one west of here that cares, trying to make Memphis matter. He sat right there about 3 weeks ago and told us all about it. Do you concern yourself more with Memphis or Nashville or statewide issues? What's your main focus?
Well, I think we have to look at all of them, because my issues in rural Tennessee is different than Brent Taylor's in Memphis, Tennessee. And I've been to Memphis visiting with Brent many times. He has had me there meeting with business owners, Fred Smith, with former Fred Smith, with FedEx,
soul, yeah.
Exactly. And with the people with AutoZone and other business leaders. We also met with the Black Chamber leaders. And they're all saying the same thing: is they've got to get crime under control. But the issue has been is you've not had a district attorney there that's willing to prosecute. You've got a city mayor that's, I think, handcuffing, if you will, the city police, and not allowing them to do what needs to be done.
The chief of police that I haven't seen in 2 years.
Exactly. And then you've got the morale, I'm assuming, based on some of those police officers that I spoke to is low. They have a hard time recruiting those police officers to come in.
Who'd want to, really? I mean,
exactly.
They don't have any support.
Exactly.
They just got their property taxes raised for midnight basketball courts that is not going to do anything to dent crime. And the businesses are leaving as soon as they can when their leases are up because tourism's dead.
Right.
I want to go to Graceland, but I wouldn't right now. I mean, I probably would have to walk home. They'd take my car.
Well, and my son has spent 4 years in Memphis at Rhodes College. He just graduated in May. He's actually going back this fall to get his master's degree. And, I asked him, I said, Caleb, how many times have you been down to Bill Street since you've been in Memphis? He said, Dad, I went one time, but that was to pick up a buddy. And he said he needed a ride back home, back to the campus. And he said, so I went down to pick him up, but he said outside of that, he said I've never been down to Bill Street, and so
wow, what a shame.
So Memphis has a set of issues, Nashville has one set of issues, and they're all different than where I come from within rural Tennessee, and so a lot of times people don't understand that you have Republican legislators that come from these urban areas. They don't always, I use the terminology, think like rural legislators do.
Technically 93 of them, whereas the other Nashville, Memphis, I guess Chattanooga, Knoxville, 4, so 91 of them are like that, and only 4 of them aren't.
Right.
But somehow they have all the power.
Yeah. So they just think, but they're representing a constituency that's a little different than my constituency. So
if you look at voter maps, it's also a sea of red where you are from versus the little islands of blue that are mostly Memphis, which has a terrible voter integrity problem.
Sure,
and
always
Nashville,
have.
It's got crime is rising in Nashville, unfortunately. I love Broadway, but it's getting sketchy. And then Knoxville, Chattanooga. Chattanooga is the technology growing capital of the universe, so we'll see how that plays out. But Knoxville, where Dolly's from, that's kind of all that's left for that big city, small town conservatism.
Yeah. And someone gave me a statistic the other day that in the past about 12 years, I believe it is, 70% of the skyscrapers in Nashville have been built in the past 12 years. So if you think about that, or in the past 12 years, 70% of what you see, the big tall skyscrapers, have been built in
Which
the past.
ironically is the exact same amount of time that the Republican Revolution happened in the state where you guys all took over. So what's going on? You guys are big into development?
So interesting. I was mentioned earlier in the podcast about being in Parkersburg, West Virginia yesterday, and I was amazed at all of the new stores that were there, Kohl's and Aldi, and FedEx had built this huge distribution center, and just had seen a lot of new growth, roads being built. And so the 2 salesmen that I was with, I said, tell me about all this great growth. I said, because West Virginia has always been considered
the poorest of the states.
Poorest of the states, kind of like Mississippi, right?
Or
and he's
Pensacola, Florida, yeah.
And they both said, well, our legislature changed and we got to have Republicans, and so we started changing things, and that's the reason you're seeing all this growth.
It's so simple.
It's amazing when you cut taxes, the growth that takes place.
Yeah. I just cut the darn taxes, or at least cap the property ones, or else you're going to lose everybody. What are your priorities next session?
Well, I'm going to introduce some legislation that will help our first responders if they're assaulted. We'll move it to a felony. We've seen over the past several months, more and more first responders, or especially our EMS workers, are being assaulted, and
the defenseless ones, like fire, not police.
Fire and not police. They are being, and believe it or not, those individuals are rolling up on the scene many times prior to law enforcement getting there. And,
Sure.
So they're sometimes defenseless.
Yeah.
And so
These are the people that run towards the fire, not away from the fire.
exactly. So we're just wanting to put a little more teeth into if you're assaulting a first responder, which will be, anywhere from law enforcement to EMS workers to fire, rescue squad. All of those individuals will move that up just a little bit. And also, I'm going to be talking with the Sheriff's Association, Chiefs of Police, as well as Department of Safety, and make it permissive if, for example, if they want to allow their EMS workers to carry. On the job. I know there will be some counties and cities that probably would not like for their EMS workers to be able to.
They have constitutional rights too.
They do have constitutional rights, and a lot of them will tell you, Senator Bailey, I'm already carrying, and so because I've seen what's taken place in other areas, and so I don't want to be defenseless, and so we're already carrying. But so that'll be something that
there's a movement afoot too to get sheriff's departments to participate with ICE. That apparently it wasn't a thing already. Hard to believe, but you sponsor that. Are you in favor of that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think what we've seen, especially in the Upper Cumberland area, the Putnam County Sheriff, he has entered into an agreement, an MOU with ICE to be a detention center as they gather individuals up in Tennessee and just basically being a detention holding area until they move them maybe to Alligator Alcatraz
Processing center, yeah.
Yeah, and so
hopefully Alcatraz somewhere else, not here, because paying for it like the guy that they busted for the crime that they moved down to El Salvador, paid to bring him back, and now he's on trial here in Tennessee. That's our dime, and I don't like it.
And let me just say this, in talking with Sheriff Ferris, the federal government's actually paying them whenever they have to house any of those individuals that ICE brings in. So that's not on the county's taxpayer.
But as federal taxpayers,
federal taxpayers, yes, we're having to pay that. But a lot of times it's more local. The locals don't want to pay for something like that.
For sure.
Although we all share in it, right?
Right.
But at the same time,
some of them, Sparta, 5,000 people, you can't really afford that.
Exactly. Well,
especially since there's so many. If
right.
there were a few, one or two, like Mayberry, fine. But we're talking thousands.
Yeah. So and his is not long term, but it's just an area for them to be detained until they move them to a full processing facility.
Well, that's good. Temporary staging area to make sure they can get processed.
But here's one thing that I would want your listeners to also know about that. It also gives him the ability because the Monterey area has a huge Hispanic population in Putnam County, which is Sheriff Ferris's county, Putnam County, also my constituents. They have a huge Hispanic population there. So let's just assume that ICE picks up Hispanic individuals, brings them into his facility. He also has the ability to say, yes, that person is an undocumented alien here within the state, but I have no record of any type of criminal activity on that person, because currently I think what ICE's objective is to remove the criminal aspect first and then go after the others. He has the ability to say to ICE, this person has no criminal activity, and so they can release that individual back. So you don't get into the situations to where some have been, ICE has been accused of removing individuals that have no criminal record, although they broke the law by coming to the United States.
I was going to say, that's the first law they broke.
That is the first
law.
law.
May or not come yet. But
exactly.
It's the old arrest them when they jump over the turnstile before they go on to commit the murder.
The other thing that he told me is that because I asked him, is there a criminal aspect to the Hispanic population that we have there in Putnam County? And he says, not the ones that live in Putnam County. He said, what we find is those that come out of Nashville into that Hispanic population. They come up for the weekend. He said a lot of times they come up looking for young ladies to start trafficking and kidnapping. In fact, there was a young lady that was just taken out of there. She was found dead here in Nashville several weeks ago. he said that's what we have to worry about. But
So these are roving sanctuary type city gangs going out into the suburbs,
right,
and messing with your people.
Exactly.
That is not okay either.
Yeah.
That's where, we need a posse for that.
exactly.
This year, 2025 is going to be wild. Lee's last few months, as you alluded to, several races for Congress, maybe U.S. Senate, if Marsha runs for governor, this big shuffle. Anything you're particularly excited about as a race to watch?
Well, number one, we're going to have a new congressman in the 6th District, which is part of my Senate district. John Rose is running. He's the only candidate that has announced that he's running
Officially, yeah.
Officially announced that he's running for governor. So my friend Van Hillary, as well as my friend Johnny Garrett, both, and another individual from Smith County, a Marine veteran, John Henry, is running for Congress, and so that's going to be an interesting race. And then, of course, seeing what's going to take place with Mark Green's district. I mean, my goodness,
You're sitting in it right now.
Exactly, and all of those individuals that are running for Mark Green's seat in Congress.
It's going to be an expensive one.
It is going to be an expensive one. So, I think to me right now, those are the two races to watch.
Okay. Well, we don't have a lot of time. I got many pages we're never going to get to. I'll have to have you back again sometime, but I'll try to bang out the best ones that I want to get on record. You're the chairman of the Commerce and Labor Committee with Brent Taylor, Steve Sutherland, Jack Johnson, Senate Majority Leader Bo Watson, very powerful chairman of the Ways and Means. How do you like working with your Senate colleagues on commerce?
Oh, I love working with all of my colleagues on Commerce Committee. And, we've got Ramesh Akbari, who is from Memphis. She's a Democrat. Many times she votes with us on the committee. And
I was going to say there's 8-1 Republicans to Democrats. She's the only one. And so I thought maybe why even take up space? But you say she works with you collegially?
Yeah, she's very good and a good committee member. If you notice, all the individuals that are on the Commerce Committee are leaders within the Senate. Commerce and Labor Committee is, it's a very tough committee. We're dealing with banking issues. We're dealing with commerce.
I wrote it down, actually. Responsible for legislation concerning commerce, insurance, and agriculture, which is Tennessee is all about. The committee also has jurisdiction over legislation concerning banking and lending institutions, communications, regulation and licensing of occupations, protections of trade and commerce against unlawful restraint and monopolies, corporations, labor and industrial relations, consumer affairs and consumer protection, and unemployment compensation. That's everything. I mean,
Everything.
What else does the state have? So what has come out of there in your time that you're most proud of?
Well, I think one of the things that came out of there was some legislation that I carried, which was, and incidentally, we also have oversight over TennCare, which is our Medicaid program, and the largest legislation monetarily that I've ever carried was allowing our Medicaid TennCare program to become a block grant. And since that time, we are the only state in the nation that gets their Medicaid dollars block granted to us. We proved to the federal government that we could manage our program efficiently, and we could also expand some services to individuals. But by doing so, we said we will return money back to the federal government, but we want part of that shared savings. It has been fully implemented for 3 years. Each year for the past 3 years, our portion of the shared savings has been $330 million. We've nearly gotten $1 billion back in the past 3 years because of this. But yet we've returned dollars back to the federal government, but we've expanded services to individuals within Tennessee, those that are on TennCare. For example, giving dental health care to adults. We all know that dental health care is very important for your overall health. If you have bad dental hygiene, it can affect your body in many ways. Mm-hmm. So we provided that coverage for individuals. We've given mothers 12 months of postpartum care. And so we've also provided over $100 million a year to rural hospitals. So that is something that I'm most proud of that this committee worked with me on, and we passed several years ago. And that was one of the last things that Donald Trump did whenever he walked out. The first in his first term was signed over giving us the ability to have that block grant bill.
It was a game changer. Has there been any bills you were disappointed in that didn't make it out that you thought should have to the General Assembly? Because obviously it can't do that until it's been through committee. Anything that you were disappointed didn't make it through?
Well, there's always, legislation that you think that should move forward. One piece of legislation that I finally got passed this year. So there's a process many times that takes place. And for example, it's CPM, Corporate Practice of Medicine, in the state of Tennessee. This goes back to the 1970s. We had a restriction to where emergency room doctors, pathologists, radiologists, and anesthesiologists had to work for a company or a corporation to be employed at a hospital. In other words, Dr. Bailey just couldn't be employed as an emergency room doctor at Cookeville Regional Medical Center. I had to work for a company or corporation. So this was some protectionism that goes all the way back to the 70s. It took me 5 years to basically finally get that repeal in place, and then we've really only got a partial repeal of it, which will help like 83 counties within the state of Tennessee. All the big counties, they still wanted to be out of it. But what we found is that those most of those emergency room doctor corporations, anesthesiologist corporations, they were being bought out by equity groups, and so of course they're wanting that for the revenue that those individuals. That's also, those four are where you usually get a surprise bill from whenever you get home. So you may come to the anesthesiology group that Dr. Bailey works for. I'm currently in your Blue Cross Blue Shield network, but Dr. Smith, who's in the same group, he's not in the network with Blue Cross Blue Shield. So you think you're getting Dr. Bailey putting you to sleep for your surgery, but Dr. Smith actually comes in that day. Then you get a surprise bill because he's not in network.
Like a subcontractor out of network did the job, but it has to be paid on a different scale.
Exactly. And so although we had already worked on the surprise billing and so forth legislation, but that was, you have 5 doctors in a group, 2 of them's not in network, 3 of them are, so they're revenue generators, right? And so so we gave the ability to the hospital to go out and hire those 4 individuals, or those 4 medical professionals individually into their hospital. The Cookeville Regional Medical Center saw their emergency room doctor corporation file bankruptcy. They had 13 days to get a new company in place to provide emergency room doctors for Cookeville Regional Medical Center. They had no leverage to go out and negotiate with another company to provide their emergency room doctors. Now they have the ability to do that.
That's a good one.
But it took 5 years. So when you ask,
5 years,
and
so you're disappointed in the length of time to get it done, but it did get done. So
Exactly.
basically, you're batting 1,000. Okay, cool. You are also on the Fiscal Review and Transportation and Safety Committees. That's another 7-2. There's 2 Dems, both from Nashville, on there, whereas the other one, one Dem from Memphis, Heidi Campbell and Jeff Yarbo.
Yep.
What's she like?
Well, Heidi, I can say this, we're all friends. We just have different points of view. In fact, Heidi was in my county on Monday or Tuesday of this week. TDEC was having they were having an open meeting relative to the landfill there. And so she traveled all the way to Sparta, Tennessee to participate in this meeting. It's funny, I found out about it from the county mayor who said, should I be concerned? Senator Heidi Campbell's here. I said, well, tell her, first of all, she should have notified me she was coming to my county.
Yeah.
So I did text her and said,
Scratching around in your playground.
yeah. But again, she comes from Nashville. She has a different viewpoint of how Tennessee should look. She thinks Tennessee should look like Nashville. Again, I come from a rural area. I think Tennessee should look like my rural area.
She's a Yankee.
She is a Yankee.
Okay. In the last 12 months, we've had Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts, Ilhan Omar most recently, and Gavin Newsom, governor of California. Obviously, they're all in town, I guess, holding rallies and raising money. Some of the most liberal members of their party. Do you think they have an eye on Tennessee, and are they right and could flip seats, or like Texas, just a place to waste money and make good trouble, as Justin Jones calls it, trying to turn us blue?
Oh, I don't think we have any concern about Tennessee going blue, and they can spend as much time as they want to in Tennessee. In fact, I would encourage them to do so. I would actually encourage them to come to the 15th Senate District and meet with my constituents. That way they could actually see what true Americans and Tennesseans actually think and believe.
They wouldn't understand.
They would have a hard time understanding, but they need to get out of the urban areas and get into rural Tennessee. That's rural America. And they need to understand what rural America and Tennessee really thinks.
The Sparta-Memphis aquifer system supplied approximately 540 million gallons per day for water use in the Mississippi embayment. The NAACP is appealing the Shelby County Health Department approval of gas turbines for Elon Musk's XAI Colossus supercomputer Memphis campus. Do you have any concerns XAI may be a water hog and use up that pure aquifer at the expense of drinking water for folks?
Well, my understanding is relative to the XAI facility going into being built there in Memphis and their need for electricity and their need for water is that basically XAI has told Memphis, bring your wastewater coming out of your treatment facility to me. We'll run it and we'll use it. We'll return it even back to the Mississippi 41% cleaner than what it's been brought to us. Yeah. So I think that's been one, when he originally went to Shelby County and wanted to build his XAI there, my understanding, and this comes from Senator Taylor, by the way, most all this information, so he is there. He's been in those meetings. Every roadblock that Shelby County, Memphis tried to put up against XAI and Elon Musk building that facility there, we don't have enough power. That's no problem. I build electric cars. I build these huge batteries. I'll be able to bring those batteries in, set it up so whenever a high peak comes in, those batteries will kick in. It won't pull from the grid. That'll be one solution. We don't have enough water. Bring me the water from your waste treatment facility. I'll clean it, use it, send it back. It'll be better. So he tried to bring a solution. But here's the other thing. He has not asked Tennessee for one incentive penny as far as what he is building there in Memphis. And that is huge. In fact,
the exact opposite of Ford and Oval City.
Oh, exactly. And so, sometimes, and he's wanting to employ people from Shelby County, and he's wanting to pay very good wages.
Which is another thing that Blue Oval didn't do. All the jobs didn't come from Shelby, even though they said it would because they set it up. Yeah.
Exactly. So, love him or hate him as far as that goes, he didn't ask the state for anything. He also has met with the governor of Mississippi about the South Haven TVA shuttered nuclear facility there, and basically met with him. He's met with TVA and said, let's get it recommissioned, let's get it going to power. And they're like, well, it'll cost maybe $2 to $4 billion. He said, okay, just let me know. Let's get it up and let's get it going. So,
he'll find that in his couch cushion somewhere. I'm
exactly.
Sure he's got it.
So whenever they want to sue and do those kind of things, I think what they first need to realize is they need to be looking at the people that the tide could lift as far as all boats. The tide lifts all boats. Yeah. I think they need to be looking at what he could actually do for Shelby County and Memphis as far as the economic impact. One final thing that they also said about that, they'll be replacing the equipment and those computers within that system every 3 years. Shelby County, Memphis, Tennessee, state of Tennessee will reap the rewards of all of that equipment going back in because of the ad valorem tax and so forth being paid on that equipment that's going back into that facility.
That's a good one. I don't want to harp on it, but nearby DeSoto County, they're worried about air quality. Any thoughts of that?
Tennessee has some of the best air quality in our nation. As far as I know, we don't have any city, whether it be Memphis, Nashville, Chattanooga, Knoxville, that's under any kind of air quality advisory. Our our departments work on our air quality departments work and monitor all of these facilities. We sometimes have stricter requirements than the federal government. And so I have no concerns that, if there's an issue there, our departments of state government will make sure that they're found and that good quality air is continued to be available for everyone.
Good, because I like these cardinals flying around. I don't want to see them harmed. Tennessee Governor Bill Lee signed the Farmland Preservation Act, landmark legislation ensuring farms can be preserved for future generations. The Farmland Preservation Act establishes a permanent conservation easement and creates a grant fund to support farmers who voluntarily choose to protect their farmland. Can you explain real quick easements and what the pros and cons of farmers putting their land in them is?
Yeah. So interestingly, my good friend Frank Nicely was opposed to this legislation, and Frank has, or his family has, an 800-acre farm on the Holston River there in Jefferson County and Knox County. And Frank was opposed to this because he was always afraid that, farmers that place their farms into those easements may have a difficult time getting them back out if at some point in time they want to get out of it. And quite honestly, he just didn't really trust the government relative to that. But that's no surprise about Frank. Mm-hmm. So when you ask me about that, I mean, we're losing, some estimates say 100 to 200 acres a day of farmland in the state of Tennessee. And so I think that we have to do something to preserve family farms. For example, I live in very rural part of White County. There's a 400-acre farm that's just adjacent to me. The family has passed away. The heirs are nephews. There's no immediate children. The heirs live in Knoxville, so they're planning on selling that farm. There was another 300-acre farm just about a half a mile from me. The family passed away. The heirs basically divided it up and sold it. Now, what we're seeing there is developers coming in. They're building, multiple houses on these farms. Do I want to see that where I live? No, because I like my farmland and I like where I live. So this gives an alternative to those families if they want to place their farm into that easement to where that the farm wouldn't be divided up by developers and subdivisions put in and so forth and so on. So, I would certainly encourage any farmer that wants to do something like that, make sure you know what you're signing. And make sure you know what you're getting into whenever you do sign that easement. But if you want to put your farm into that, by all means, just know what you're signing.
Okay. Let's try a little lightning round here so I can get through some of this. You're a member of the Tennessee Farm Bureau, big, powerful group here in Tennessee. Senate Bill 527, sponsored by Senator John Stevens of Huntingdon, would provide legal immunity to pesticide manufacturers. Mm-hmm. I think it passed in North Carolina. It failed here. How do you feel about this?
Well, I think we have, again, that goes back to we have GMO, we have non-GMO, we have people that support that. I can tell you that we just need to be sure that when we pass any kind of legislation giving immunity to large corporations like this, that we still have the public interest in mind.
Okay. You, Mark Pody, and Don White sponsored SB 00027. I don't know if you guys ever say the zeros when you're talking about the bills, but that's what it is. Prohibits orders, proclamations, or rules issued by the governor under emergency, signed by Governor Lee just 2 weeks ago, obviously in reaction to COVID, and will limit the next governor unless something happens this year, I suppose. How do you think Lee handled COVID? How did the legislature handle COVID, and what could we do better next time?
Well, so nothing like that had happened in recent history, right? So, that's something that we...
not since the Black Plague in Europe.
Not since the Black Plague. And so I think that all states, including Tennessee, we found ourselves, not knowing exactly how to handle that. Now, again, it's one of those situations that your governor may have the best intentions at heart and do a great job handling a crisis like that, but then you may have a Gavin Newsom or the governor out of Michigan that just basically prolongs it.
Oh, I had Governor Jay Inslee. He kept them for 1,000 days.
Yeah,
That guy should go in jail.
Yeah. So, we, overall, I think the information provided, Governor Lee did a good job. I think what we do need to have, and that was the impetus of that bill, was making sure that if, a governor issues Emergency Powers Act, that it's for a limited amount of time, because we don't need a dictator, so to speak. You do have a General Assembly. And so, I mean, with technology today, worst case scenario, if we had to have some type of a Zoom meeting and a Zoom call, we could, approve or disapprove something if that was the extreme that we had to get to.
Yeah, just imagine if a Democrat was actually in control at the time.
Again, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, our businesses would have hurt a lot more.
A lot more. They were bad, but it could have been worse. So just real quick, Governor Lee, letter grade for handling it?
Handling the COVID crisis.
Compared to his peers, sure.
Yeah, I would say he was an A.
A, and then the legislature?
Oh, I think that the legislature, we were an A+.
A+, and then to make sure that the next guy gets an A+, you think having limitations of time would be the answer?
Absolutely.
Okay. SB 1083, lots of folks on there. Jack, Janice Bowling, Joey Hensley. These are serious folks. That's the Dismantle DEI in Employment Act, signed, so it's law. But this just in yesterday, Belmont University allegedly renames DEI Program Office of Hope, Unity, and Belonging, HUB, very clever. Y'all aware of this word game they're playing to undermine Trump and your new law? And are you talking about cracking down on them, a Christian school, no less?
Yeah. Well, so first I'd heard of that, so I hadn't seen the news to see that they had renamed that. I think that when the General Assembly comes back in January, if some of these institutions that are under this new law, if they've tried to find creative ways to go around us, then I'm sure the legislature will find creative ways to combat that.
Okay, and not just Belmont. Vanderbilt University scrubbed a web page titled "Our Commitment to Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion," removing all references to DEI, updated to instead reflect the university's commitment to belonging, collaboration, and growth, BCG. So that's not as clever as over there at Belmont.
Yeah.
So do you think they might be doing that with the gender affirming care that y'all jumped on them after that Matt Walsh?
Yeah, we have to watch all of those, universities. I mean, they're a bastion for just, liberal ideals and policies and procedures and so forth. And, they're educated beyond their mental capacity sometime. And so we just have to, make sure that all Tennesseans are treated fairly. I want to be treated fairly, and I want you to be treated fairly. But at the same time, I shouldn't be given any exceptions, and therefore you shouldn't be given any exceptions.
Yankee education, even though they say they're a Christian school. Okay, last one. In 2018, you crushed the Democrat. You ran against 73.6, 26.4. That is a blowout by 31,000 votes. They didn't even try in 2022. You ran unopposed for D15, so we call that a safe seat. Do you have any interest in leadership positions, say maybe if Randy McNally moved on from lieutenant governor or something?
Well, obviously, Lieutenant Governor McNally is up for re-election this next year, and then in 2026, he hasn't indicated that he's not running for re-election. Obviously, if he did run for his Senate seat and was reelected, I'm sure that he would want to continue to serve as lieutenant governor. I think I say this quite often, there's 132 legislators in the Tennessee General Assembly. Every one of us think that we can be governor, and every one of us thinks that we can be Speaker of the House or we can be lieutenant governor. And so, I have Governor McNally has been extremely good to me. I was a freshman when he named me chair of transportation and safety. and then he chose me to lead the Commerce Committee, and so he has certainly seen, I guess, some leadership qualities in me, and so I appreciate that. You know, again, if and when the time comes, I plan on offering myself to the Senate, and if they decide to choose me or move me forward, that's fine. If not, then depending upon who gets to be lieutenant governor, I could be in purgatory for a little while, or I may be able to continue to stay in another leadership role. That is, assuming that I did run for lieutenant governor and someone else ran. And
it only takes 14 votes to be lieutenant governor because it's a
pretty
small
much.
club in the Senate there.
It is.
Now, if you decided you wanted to be a state senator or U.S. senator
Right.
or a U.S. congressman, takes a little bit more energy and money,
Right.
but does that interest you at all?
Well, it was very interesting. Once we knew that John Rose was going to run for governor, the day after the November election, I started receiving phone calls because everyone knew that John was going to jump in and run for governor. I started getting phone calls from individuals that are now running and for the congressional seat, and they basically said, "Are you going to run? Are you going to consider that?" And I said, "You know what? I used to think that I wanted to go to Washington and be a congressman, but that's such a cesspool up there." And I said, "I love Tennessee. I think I can be more effective in Tennessee than I can in Washington." So
you're much more the Bailey from A Wonderful Life than Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Exactly.
If you're going to do the Jimmy Stewart comparisons there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with that.
So-
Jody Barrett, I don't know what you're thinking, brother.
yeah, exactly. So I decided that I had lots of phone calls relative to that. But Tim Burchett, my good friend Tim Burchett, told me he gave me a ride. I was in Washington, and from the airport over to the Capitol, he gave me a ride one day. We were on the same flight, and he said, "This will be my 7th year. I'm hoping I get a bill passed." I mean, 7 years, and I passed bills my first year that I was in the state Senate. So I think that says a lot. You can actually see some of your accomplishments in the Tennessee Senate.
All right. Excellent. Well, Senator, thank you for your time. We are at the end here. So tell everyone where they can go to find out about your reelection and your social media, anything you want to tell.
Yeah. Absolutely. So you can check me out on X, Paul Bailey for Tennessee, and that's Paul Bailey FORTN, or you can also go to my Facebook page, same deal, Paul Bailey for TN, or Senator Paul Bailey. You can search me there and find out a little more about me.
And normally you have a cowboy hat on.
A lot of times I wear a cowboy hat, and again, that goes back to my showing the quarter horses. And I tell folks a lot of times that are in Texas and Oklahoma where I show, they wouldn't recognize me in a suit, but sometimes that's the reason I do wear the cowboy back here in Tennessee. I want them to be able to recognize me in a suit and a cowboy hat.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again for coming on.
Hey, thank you.
Hang on, everybody. I'll be right back.
Sing a song about the heartland, the only place I feel at home. Sing about the way a good man works until the daylight's gone.
Thank you for coming back. It's that time to remind everyone to please subscribe to heartlandjournal.com. That's how we grow and keep this content free for you. And thank you. That is it for this episode. Thank you, Senator Paul Bailey, for coming on the show. I'm blessed to get access to folks like him in Nashville and Tennessee government that many can't or won't. And I'm happy to be able to introduce you to them on this show. Thank you for watching and learning from another office holder that is a Republican about what is a Republican in Tennessee. Let's keep it that way. As a famous Spartan once said, a well-known Spartan quote is "Melon leb," which translates to "come and take them." This phrase was famously uttered by King Leonidas of Sparta during the Battle of Thermopylae when the Persian king Xerxes demanded the Spartans surrender their weapons. Leonidas also said, "Come back with your shield or on it." This was a common saying by Spartan mothers to their sons before battle, emphasizing the importance of either returning victorious or dying in battle, not running away like a coward. This is Sparta, a proud declaration of Spartan identity and defiance. Give them nothing, but take from them everything. A call for Spartans to be relentless and uncompromising in battle. I prefer to die on my feet than live on my knees. a testament to the Spartan spirit of preferring death to dishonor, or as we know it, give me liberty or give me death. I prefer to die on my feet than live on my knees. What a great saying. All right, this is goodbye for now. I am your host, Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of heartlandjournal.com. See you all next time. Peace in our time, and definitely glory to God.
Yeah, I've been dreaming of the wild, wild plains, walking where the pine trees dance.
Heartland Journal Podcast is the media property of heartlandjournal.com, where you can find news stories, commentary, and content serving the heartland of America. Any views or opinions represented on the podcast are personal and belong solely to the creator and do not represent those of the people, institutions, or organizations that the creator may or may not be associated with in professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated.